Welcome to your daily writing habit. If you are writing a book or thinking about it, or maybe you've started writing a book, but you need some help getting it done, you are in the right place. Good morning. Happy Writer Wednesday, everyone. I'm your host, Christine Whitmarsh. If you're looking for me online, look for Christine Inc. INK, like that stuff we write with. Each day, I'm sharing with you the writing habits I've learned over my 20 years as a ghostwriter, book coach, and author. I have found that three things in particular have a huge impact on your success as an author, and they can even turn someone who barely sees themselves as a writer into a published book author. Those three things are writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. And once again, good morning, everyone, here today on Your Daily Writing Habit to talk about the power of writing a book and building a personal and professional legacy. I have two very special guests, wonderful clients, a smart, successful, inspirational mother-daughter pair who are all about making an impact on the world we live in, Laura and Lauren Herring, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Take it away, Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Herring, and I'm a very satisfied client of Christine's. And I wrote a book with her called, yes, hold it up, No Fear Allowed, a story of guts, perseverance, and the power of impact. So I am excited to be here because I really haven't had a chance to talk on a webcam about this. And how I got to write this book was 34 years ago, I started a company called Impact Group. That was after I had been a private practice psychologist, and I had been a psychologist for over 13 years. And I kept seeing people who were in significant trouble because of their jobs, because of relocating for their company. And so I wrote a book, No Fear Allowed. That was a message to them, and it was a message to me. So I'm delighted to be here today. I started the company Impact Group, and the book is all about the lessons I learned in growing a company with no business experience at all, other than having a private practice. But we grew into a company of over 400 employees, and Lauren has grown it to 52 countries. So that's very exciting. So I am Lauren's mother, and I'm most proud of that achievement in my life.
So nice. And Lauren, tell us who you are.
Well, thank you for having me. And I was excited when you told me that I was your first repeat guest. So that's exciting too. I'm Lauren Herring. I am first and foremost the daughter of Laura Herring, and I'm also the CEO of Impact Group today. So when Laura retired a little over 10 years ago, I just jumped in and was thrilled to take over the family business. At our core at Impact Group, we are a career and leadership development company. So we're a coaching company where we help people maximize their potential and achieve their career dreams through coaching. When my mom founded it in 1988, we really focused in this cool niche of being able to help the accompanying spouses and partners of corporate relocations with job search at the time. And then we also helped them integrate into the new community and helped people just feel at home again as quickly as possible in the move, with the idea that a happy employee is going to be a productive employee and one that is retained for the long term. And amazingly, that vision that my mom had over 30 years ago seems like it's obvious today. I mean, that's everywhere about well-being and, you know, happy, healthy employees, but it was so innovative at the time. And over the years, we've grown the business so that we focus on that relocation niche. We also do a niche in HR called outplacement. So when someone gets laid off, we actually help with career coaching as part of the severance package. And then we also do leadership development and executive coaching work. So, really anything around careers and leadership development, that's where we focus on. And similar to what my mom said, I am a proud mother of two also, Kennedy and Luca.
And you're also a proud mother of two books. Let's
Yes,
not forget about that.
That's right. Yes, my first book, This Side Up, supports people going through relocation. So it is the simple guide to your successful relocation. And then at the really deepest, darkest point in the pandemic, I published Take Control of Your Job Search, the 10 emotions you must master to land the job. And Christine was pivotal in helping me with those books as well. So again, another satisfied client.
This is just a big love fest today. I love this. And I really like what you mentioned, Lauren, about how just forward thinking your mom is here. And I never even thought about that till now. Like everything, all the conversations that are happening in the workforce and the challenges about, purpose and, making sure your employees, feel purpose and they feel loved and self-care and all that. You were way ahead of your time, Laura, because you're just like, yeah, we know.
Well, it's interesting, Christine, that you say that. My personal mission statement has always been to make a positive difference in the lives I touch. And we've made that corporate mission statement. Lauren has made it her personal corporate mission statement. And so it just seemed natural when I was seeing all these people in private practice having family issues due to relocation or being fired on a job. I just saw it as a solution. And while that was easy to see, it was harder to build a company and get other people to see the value. It takes a long time to get others to follow you.
Yeah, this is true. So let's get into it here. So Lauren, you've told us about Impact Group. So how, in your opinion, is the company, or your assessment, I should say, how has the company changed over the years, and what's your vision moving forward?
So actually, I'm going to start from the perspective of how I came to embrace the idea of joining the company, because growing up, I really never saw myself as joining the family company and taking over, quote, following in my mom's footsteps. I really wanted to chart my own path growing up. And it wasn't until right around the time I was about graduating from college when I realized, just because she's grown the company and built this amazing foundation doesn't mean that if I were to join the company, that I would always just have to keep doing exactly what she was doing. And in fact, I as a business major, it was strange that it hadn't dawned on me before that if I were to join the company, if I were to eventually take over the company, I would have to evolve the company, because the world isn't static. So if a company stays static and I'm just, quote, following in her footsteps, then, that's not a successful way to long-term run a business. So that was how I got my mind around it as a younger professional that was struggling with the questions of who am I and what do I want to do with my professional life. As I took over the company coming out of the Great Recession, I actually took over in 2009. So talk about a challenging time to build a leadership brand. We actually, because of the type of work we do, like I said, that outplacement work where we're part of people's severance package, we were at an all-time high in 2008 and 2009. And so coming in, I actually don't think I really appreciated the challenge that I had ahead of me in terms of, frankly, for the next couple of years, that there wasn't anybody else to lay off. And the economy, if you remember, took a really long time to get back on its feet. It was a slow recovery. And so that was a difficult time to then be figuring out, okay, no one's moving. And again, there's nobody else to lay off. So what are we going to do? So actually the biggest shift in our business is one of the areas that I see today as our biggest growth driver is developing that leadership development and executive coaching practice. And it's really exciting because that's the area going forward where companies are so excited to invest in talent, recognizing that we're in a war for people and the best people win. You want to retain the people you have because it's really hard and expensive to recruit new people. And so the more you can, number one, make people feel valued and appreciated and feel part of a culture that they connect with, then you're more likely to keep them. People, especially millennials, but really all generations, want to be developed. And so, having coaching as a development tool is another way to retain talent. And also, we know that the number one relationship that you need to build and reinforce in an organization is that relationship between an employee and their manager. And we also know that just overall right now, people are stretched thin. Managers are oftentimes just telling people what to do and not necessarily treating people like human beings first. Instead, they're being treated as employees first. But at the end of the day, we're human beings first, employees second. And so that's the other thing that we do is help organizations guide and coach managers of how they can be better leaders so that ultimately you can retain the people that you have and grow your own.
That's great. And I do have to say about your people, because I had the opportunity to speak to many of your coaches when I assisted you with your book. They really just struck me as not only just very, intelligent, kind, generous people, but I could really just get from them how invested they were in you and your company and your vision. So I was just really, really impressed speaking with your people as part of that book.
Well, thank you. It's nice to know that there's someone out there that feels like we practice what we preach.
Absolutely. So going back to the handoff of the company, because I know that you told that story very well. It was the most dramatic handoff decision ever. the airplane story, Laura, in your book, No Fear Allowed. But if you want to tell that story about, when you decided you wanted to hand the company over, essentially, hand it over to Lauren, what were your concerns and challenges around that decision?
Well, interestingly enough, they were more maternal concerns. She was only 30 years old. That alone was a significant milestone in any woman's life. She wasn't married at the time, and I know that was one of her goals. And I also knew the 18-hour workday that many times Mike and I both worked. I didn't want the company to become her life. And that was my biggest fear. I never had any fear that she couldn't run the company because she had an MBA from Washington U. She was well liked by all of the clients. So I never, ever felt like she didn't have the skill set. What I was concerned about is, would she have a life? And that really did concern me. And then when we did she made a presentation to us because we wanted to sell the company. I didn't want it to be on her shoulders, that she had to grow the company. And she said, hey, look, I want to buy the company. I don't want you to just give it to me. And so she came up with a payment plan that sounded A-okay with us. And over a 10-year period, it was hers. And so she has devoted a good portion of her everyday life into that program of running that company. And she grew it. I think we had at the time a little over 150, 200 Fortune 500 companies. We were in 6 international countries, and she's grown it to how many international countries now, Lauren?
Yeah, well, we support people in over 70 locations worldwide now.
So, I mean, she's really taken it and run with it. I've got to make sure my computer's plugged in. It's about to go off. I just got a light. So let me disappear for a moment.
This is how we know it's real and essentially live. My listeners are so used to this. It's fine. Lauren, any responses to anything your mom just said other than that last part about the computer?
So I appreciate as a parent that was definitely a concern. I heard it even more so from my dad. And at the same time, similar to what she was saying, with a focus of making a positive difference. I mean, I'm, very focused and career oriented, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else because of the direct impact that we make on people's lives. So I was motivated to make it happen, motivated to continue the legacy.
That's awesome. So Laura, the $1 million question here is, so once you made this decision and you didn't have the 18-hour work days anymore, what was the point where you and your husband, Mike, looked at each other and said, okay, now what? And I know, and I think right after that, maybe the idea of writing a book came along, but yeah, what was that conversation like? Now, what do I do with my days?
Well, to be honest, we had such a successful finale when we left. We landed, well, we had a company of 20 years who was a client, and they gave us the biggest outplacement job we ever had, 45,000 employees. And that was just so exciting. And we built the company rapidly to get that quality. We had to bring in people, train them day and night. We were literally having people work till midnight to train people around the country. And so we were kind of tired after the year and a half of making that happen. And so we decided the company is financially stable. There's nothing Lauren has to really worry about there. And we're financially stable, so we don't have to worry. So why not see the world? So we started out traveling around the world, and we continue to do it, and we love it. And we bring sometimes Lauren and her husband with us, or the whole family with us, and life is grand. We were on a boat, and I had my computer with me, and I had started to write this book, several years before, because what I said, no one helped me really. No one really sat me down and said, Laura, you need to know this. You need to be prepared to handle this. And if someone does this to you, if a client does this to you, here are some options you need to look at. So what I did is, and that was the best advice you gave me, is don't do it chronologically. Do it according to the stories that you like to tell, Laura. And the stories will engage people to learn the lessons. So at the end, I said to you, I think what I want to do at the end of each chapter, tell what that story and dramatic story did to me as a business owner. Thank you. And what did I learn from that experience? And an example is when our first major client bought over $350,000 worth of services and plan books and whatnot. We had audio tapes back then. That's how old I am. And when we went to deliver them, someone in the corporation over the relocation department said, no, I don't want to use them. I hadn't sold them to them. I had sold them to the executive vice president, to the CEO. And he just turned to me and said, I can't make him use them. I was devastated, but I really do believe that God always has a plan. And what that plan was for me to not rest on my laurels, but get out there and sell, sell, sell. So I got on a plane every other week and started selling to corporations I've never met or had never really intended to sell to. We live in St. Louis, and at the time we had 25 Fortune 500 companies as part of, well, our pool of possible prospects.
Mhm.
And we wound up selling a good portion of those, but one by one, they all moved out. And so I had to get on a plane to really get in front of the IBMs of the world, the Johnson and Johnsons of the world, the Abbotts of the world, Caterpillar, and the list goes on. But at the end, we had well over 200 Fortune 500 companies.
Amazing. So I know as a result of the book, you have had opportunities as, a speaker and kind of, some pretty big events that you've done, and just as an overall thought leader. So what kind of highlights of your journey can you share with us as being a published author and kind of a thought leader?
Well, I'll tell you, I am totally honored because any CEO knows you don't do it alone. It's people like Lauren and the people under you who helped make the clients love us. Account managers has so much to do with making people love you. And ours was really a company of love, and people loved my account managers like you did. You loved the coaches. And so when I would speak, I think some of the most important speeches I gave were to eWomen's Network, a company run by Sandra and Kim Yancey in Dallas, but they have over 60 groups across the country who belong as members. And what I saw in each one of those members who have their own company and who are trying to grow their companies, that was really my sweet spot. Young, exciting, exuberant entrepreneurs, and some not so young, some who were starting second careers. My book resonated with them. And as a result, the book got to be #1 bestseller in Women in Business the first day it came out. Wasn't that exciting, Lauren?
Absolutely.
We were jumping up and down.
Yeah, I remember. It was just an awesome, fun celebration.
It was.
Yeah. And we were dumbfounded to be #1 on the first day of publication.
Right.
So that is the joy. In fact, I just went to an eWomen's Network conference just a little while ago, and I'm signed up for the next eWomen's Network, and I just love it. And Sandra and I have become best friends, and I just adore her and Kim. They have the right message for business people.
Yep. And speaking of eWomen, I have to tell my favorite No Fear Allowed book story, and I think Lauren knows because she was there. It was when you spoke, right? I think the book wasn't even published yet, and you spoke at one of the eWomen Network conferences.
Yeah.
And afterwards, Lauren and I and another gal, we were manning the sales table. And Laura, you apparently got everybody so incredibly fired up by your keynote speech in like the biggest room in the big hotel in Dallas and everything, that when the doors opened, it was like Beatlemania. Like all of a sudden it was just like this, Lauren and I just watched as a swarm of women just came like attacking the table, and they were just throwing money and credit cards at us so quickly, to pre-order your book that wasn't even published yet, that Lauren and I were just grabbing money and grabbing. That was just the funniest thing. I was like, oh my gosh, Laura's a rock star.
Well, I thank you for that, because you really did a great job of encouraging and helping me. The funny part, Lauren, I don't know if I told you this, I walked in with 300 pages. And she goes, well, this isn't exactly what I do typically. So she read all my pages, and then she broke it all down to different stories. And then we put it together the way it should have been.
We made it a book. I think it was in a big FedEx envelope, or I think it was like several FedEx envelopes from what I recall when you walked into my office.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
But I thank you for that. And yes, seeing women crave information. And Lauren, that's one of the things I want to tell you. I love the fact that you've really focused on women in leadership over the past couple of years, because yes, we know men need leadership too, but women in a corporation don't always have a sponsor or a mentor. And so your coaching and your team's coaching really get these women so excited in corporate America. I mean, these are 250 corporations, Fortune 500, that she is selling these women in leadership programs. And then I think the men got jealous, didn't they? And they had to start giving men leadership programs, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so the wonderful thing is that everybody can benefit from leadership development. And, honestly, a lot of the same advice that we give to women is perfectly applicable to men. It's just especially maybe a little bit more targeted on some of the behaviors that women could work on. And the other thing that's been really exciting with our Women in Leadership programs is because yes, there's some behaviors that women need to focus on to develop their leadership skills. For example, one of the things that we talk about is women are notoriously good at passing off compliments. Someone says, "Oh, you did a really good job on that project." "Oh, thanks, but it was the team." Wait, hold on. You just took all of the good stuff that was coming towards you and you passed it along to other people. And I'm not saying that it's not good to say the team did a good job, but how can you say, "Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I was really thrilled to lead the team and they were amazing at pulling everything together in a great way too." So there's ways to, actually accomplish both. But so, we work on some of those kinds of behaviors and much more, some things that are, a little deeper and more complex, like confidence and imposter syndrome, for example, that may be a little bit more oriented towards things that women struggle with slightly more than men, although again, men deal with those things too. But what's exciting when we work with these companies is that in addition to working with the women, we work with the managers and we also work with HR, because at the end of the day, this is not a women's issue. This is a business issue. And you can't put all the onus of fixing this situation that's born out of bias and all sorts of other issues. You can't put all the onus of fixing this issue on the women themselves. So by working with the managers of the women and, the broader HR systems, then year over year, we have some clients where we've done, 8 years in a row of these women in leadership programs. Well, over that time, we've worked with enough managers in the program that the ripple effect starts to change the culture, actually, which is really exciting, especially in these really male-dominated kind of organizations. So yes, as a second generation women-owned business, we have found one of our sweet spots is in supporting women in leadership initiatives. And as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it.
I can.
Well, what I love, Christine, is when Lauren and I are at the same event, which is interesting. In St. Louis, there are lots of fundraisers and there's lots of business meetings. And every now and then I'll go, usually as Lauren's guest. And then the big wigs who are women in that meeting rush her and say, "Oh my God, it's so great to see you. Thank you. I just love what we're doing in our leadership, women's leadership." And then people just start gathering around them saying, "Well, what is it? What are you doing?" And it's so fun to watch people openly acknowledge that they're getting coaching from Lauren's team and company.
So you've passed the women corporate making an impact Beatlemania gene onto your daughter, it sounds like.
Yeah,
You guys are just a rock star family.
She is a rock star. She really is. Especially when she comes home at night to Luca and Kennedy. There's not enough of her to go around.
She makes it work. And speaking of, she's a rock star. She's a rock star author. So Lauren, what are the highlights so far for you of being an author?
Well, when Mom published her book, it was after she had retired, and it was really more of a memoir that is also I don't want to say exactly a how-to, but it's, lessons learned.
Right.
Here are ways that you as especially female entrepreneur could really resonate with. And so, her book, No Fear Allowed, is, people just love it, especially women entrepreneurs. as that motivator to feel like it's, a companion piece to the entrepreneurial process. Of course, that's not my story. And then the other piece is, I'm still in the business. So my goal in writing the books was more focused on how do I build our brand at Impact Group in the areas that we want to drive growth in. So I started out, really looking at our foundations. Where are we really, where do we have, some of the strongest roots? And I went back to our roots with relocation. And so then I designed, or I wrote this side up to be a companion piece, not only for someone who's relocating, but since we sell to clients, could this be something that a corporate client or a partner would be interested in having as a sales token or something like that. So we've used this for business development purposes, getting in the door, just connecting with executives on this topic. And then same thing in the job search side. So we, as a career transition organization, I wanted to talk about our perspective on job search. And if you look at the thousands and thousands of books out there that are about job search, what I found in my research was there were hundreds of books on interviewing, thousands of books on resumes, but zero books on the emotional toll that job search takes on you. And anyone who's gone through a job search, even in a good job search economy like we have right now, will tell you that oftentimes job search is an extremely stressful process, and the ups and the downs are so challenging. And the what of the job search sometimes is the easy part. It's the how, like how do you manage through, and especially if you've been laid off, or if you're feeling like you're discouraged because you're not getting feedback from the job boards, and your resume just goes into a giant black hole, which is what most people feel like when they're applying online, then it's so easy to get really discouraged. And that's where our coaches come in. And that's the number one thing that people take away from our coaching programs is not just the information, but it's the application of the information and the emotional support. So that's how I had this kind of aha moment of we need to help people figure out how to make their way through the ups and downs of the job search. So we have the stages of kind of loss, the stages of stagnation, and then we have, the emotions that move you forward as well. So we highlighted about 10, and I say we because really just pulling the thousands of hours of wisdom from our coaches, because I'm just one person with one perspective, but we had 30 years of experience in our coaching team to pull from on how to help people through the job search process. So that's been really fun to be able to highlight a unique perspective and also differentiate ourselves at Impact Group, saying, yeah, there's lots of people that can guide you through the what of the job search, but we really put our money where our mouth is, or what really makes us unique at Impact Group is this focus on the personal transition that people go through in this time as well. So in both cases, I used the book to be a sales tool to help differentiate Impact Group.
Yeah. And just
I'll also say that it has become a fabulous graduation gift for college graduates, because I'll tell you, it is amazing. People always say, oh, I gave that to my son or daughter or my niece or nephew, and it made a huge difference. And I do a lot of CEO coaching now, and every now and then they'll say, well, I have someone who's looking for a job, would you coach them? And I refer them to Lauren's book because she knows all about the job search. through that book and the emotional, and it's usually emotions that are keeping people from landing the job.
Yeah. And so I don't want to make it seem like the book is so touchy feely that it has no application to the job search as well. But I focus on primarily two main job search techniques that are so critical and foundational. And so I talked about personal branding a lot in the book. And then also networking are probably two of the most critical job search techniques, and how some of the emotions play into how you can how you can apply these techniques in the right way, depending on where you're feeling emotionally. But at the end of the day, you have to know what you stand for, and be able to communicate about what value you bring to an organization, whether that's through your networking, through an interview. And the most important person that you need to convince about the value you bring is actually not a future employer. It's about yourself, because the confidence that comes when you truly own your rock star capabilities, then that's going to be the element that's going to help convince somebody else that you can bring that too. So, these job search techniques are so tied in with the emotions too.
Yeah, and I was going to remark, it is such a versatile book, and because you put so much research and, like you said, the interviews with your coaches into it, I've actually featured it a few times, I think, in my Sunday Storytime episodes here on Your Daily Writing Habit over the past 2 years, because it struck me how, and you are about the touchy feely thing, like your strategies are extremely actionable and, very well grounded in research and knowledge and things like that. So I featured it not specifically just for people in job search, but for all of us in the last 2 years dealing with a lot of these 10 emotions that you highlighted in the book, saying, yes, this book is framed around the conversation of job search, but wow, how great is this actionable strategy that Lauren laid out for this emotion that we could all be using right now? So it's a very versatile book.
Thanks. And I'll actually give an example, my favorite personal example on this. And, just as an FYI for anyone who's interested in the book, and you may not need all the job search stuff because maybe you're not looking for a job, but actually one of the appendices is a tactics guide. So you can literally just go to the emotion in the tactics guide and go to fear and say, okay, here's a strategy to address when you're feeling fearful. And the situation that I personally applied this to, actually, while I was writing the book, I was dealing with a complex business issue that had the potential risk where I could lose a major client. And it was very stressful. It was one of those kinds of issues where I was lying awake in the middle of the night and just feeling this pit in my stomach. I'm sure we've all been there, depending on the situation. And when all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what do I say to do when you're feeling fearful? Let me employ this. So the advice, or one of the pieces of advice that I employ is, imagine the worst case scenario. And this might be like, oh my gosh, if you're feeling fearful, is that really going to help? But a lot of times what we find in in our head is that this black cloud of terribleness is actually probably worse than what is actually the worst case scenario. And so what I did is I imagined, okay, what is the actual worst case? What is a legitimate worst case scenario that could happen in this situation? And I was like, okay, I could lose a client. Okay, well, if that happened, what would be the outcome? Well, it would hurt, but could I make it through? Would that be the end of Impact Group, or would I be able to make it through? I'm like, well, I'd be able to make it through. And what would I need to do in order to make it through? I would have to do this, this, and this. Okay, well, if that actually happens, I'm ready, so that if I need to pull the trigger on this, this, and this, then I can move forward and we can successfully move past this challenge. In the end, fortunately, everything blew over, clear skies, everything was fine. But because I was able to say, okay, here's the actual worst case scenario that I believe would happen, rather than just this ominous, terrible pit in my stomach. You know, when something is actually concrete, a lot of times the worst case scenario isn't as bad as you might fear.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, Lauren, there's your next book.
I know,
You know,
there's more room on my shelf.
Yeah. Take those lessons learned that you have learned in writing out those 10 emotions, and now turn it into business decisions and give examples of each, because you've lived it already. And no, thank you. I don't want to write any more books. I love coaching CEOs right now, and it is so exciting when their companies explode. And I just coached one CEO who is going to be selling her company for more mega millions than you can imagine. And I'm so proud of her, so proud of her.
That's great. You just kind of segued into my next point about the power of books, which is, as you know, the rock that I stand on for my entire life, my career and everything. Is I love that, Laura, you said, you know, Lauren, there's your next book. You didn't say there's your next blog post. And this is nothing against all other forms of content. We didn't say there's your next blog post, your next keynote speech, your next YouTube video, your next social media post. You said there's your next book, because, and I really want to talk about this, really the power of a book versus other forms of content as something more permanent and long lasting and, you know, much more thorough. You can really take deep dives into your subject matter in a book, unlike any other forms of content. And also from the standpoint of, you know, building a personal and professional legacy. I'd love for you both to talk about that, like why a book versus, you know, some other way of communicating information, especially again, when cementing your, you know, personal legacy.
Christine, that's a great question, because I'm in a book club and I'm joining 2 book clubs here in Florida. I love to read. The difference is when I read now, I listen in my earbuds, but I go back to the book. I buy both the Audible, so I hurry up and get the book, you know, read, and then I go back and I highlight. I love highlighting books, and that might be sacrilegious, but I love it. And then I love to give away that book. And some of my friends say, oh gosh, Laura, when you give me a book that's highlighted, I feel like I'm looking into your mind. You know, it's really fun. I love giving books. And there might be another book in me if Lauren would ever want to do a mother-daughter, but she's the achievement I'm most proud of. So that's the only way I'd probably write again. But I do think it would be fun, Lauren, taking a look at what we might do together. Of course, she's got so much on her plate, but hey, we have Christine, right?
Busy people always have too much on their plates. That's why, and I always say, if you weren't that busy, what on earth would you be writing about? Not being busy. Only busy people who don't have time to write books are the ones that write books. And it just, a thought struck me how enthusiastic and obviously passionate you both got when speaking about, you know, women in leadership roles and just women in business. That might be an idea worth exploring, because you both had like a similar like light in your face when you talked about that earlier in our conversation today.
Well,
Absolutely.
I would really be following on Lauren's coattails. I could tell you that. She would have to instruct me, but it would be fun.
That's always fun. You know that about everybody listening to the show knows how fun it is writing a book. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek because it depends.
Well, I'll tell you
not fun 100% of the time, but we all, you know, it's a journey.
Christine, I'll tell you one thing that I did last July, and I haven't wrapped it up yet, but I toyed with the idea of modeling for older women's issues and things, you know? And so I went through this Hollywood, Lauren, what is that called?
A photo shoot?
Photo shoot. And it was one of the highlights of my life. And the guy, the top photographer, in fact, I did it through eWomen's Network. The top photographer did 50 to 70 photos, and I still haven't picked the best ones that I want to have copied yet, you know, but I just love that. So things lead to different things, you know, and then I see Elon Musk's mother on the front of the swimsuit. of
Thinking about that.
Sports Illustrated. It's like, not so much.
She's a cover girl, isn't she? Yeah, I think I saw that. That's pretty amazing. I don't know if we're comparing you to Elon Musk, Lauren. That's a whole other conversation.
Good Lord, I hope not.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, well, and like just from my perspective on the legacy, it's I love to showcase the amazing work of our team and the unique value that we provide at Impact Group. And again, how can we leverage a book to help grow our company?
And to have those, again, those deeper conversations that maybe you can't have with your clients and prospective clients and, the people you do business with. How long would it take to have a conversation of that magnitude versus saying, just here, there's a book that says everything, read the book. And it's kind of like you've had an advanced conversation with them before even meeting you.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
I'll tell you, Christine, when I showed up at eWomen Network last week, about 10 women came running up to me from their table saying, I read your book. I love your book. And my first thought was, how did they recognize me? I had long blonde hair in this book. And now but anyway, they recognized me. It was hilarious. But my point is to underscore the importance of books. Yeah. You can only speak so frequently as a keynote speaker. So a book will send your message out to the world forever.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I love about it.
Right. So finally, and true to the theme of this show, your daily writing habit. I'm obsessed with habits. I think this is a recent obsession in my life, Laura, since we spoke last. I've become obsessed with helping authors develop the habits they need to write and finish writing a great book. We know is the theme of the show. But could each of you share your most effective habits, work and personal? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go. Something I've actually started in the last year is at the beginning of every week and at the beginning of every day, I write, what's the one thing that I need to get done today? And so it's not just a to-do list of, things to cross off, but like, what's the one thing that is going to move something forward? And by writing it down and committing to it, I find that I'm much more effective at making it happen. And I have a special notebook that I use for writing this every day.
I love the special notebook thing. And I really like it because I can immediately translate this to my listeners about the writing cave, as we call when we go into our writing sessions to write our books. So to my listeners, how about rather than writing a list of everything you'd like to accomplish in the writing cave that day, chapter 1, chapter 2, revised chapter 6 and all that, how about following Lauren's lead and coming up with what's the one most important thing that you could accomplish in your writing cave time today? So I like that, how that translates, Lauren.
Very good. Very good. I'm not that focused on writing right now, but I'll tell you, I always keep a list of things that I want to accomplish, which is very different than just writing. But the first thing my husband and I do every morning, other than kiss each other good morning, is we have a good half hour of prayer time. We read from a book, and I get to pick it one day. He gets to pick the book the next day. And then we talk about it. And then we found this wonderful book by Matthew Kelly called And God Laughed. And I said, I wonder why I bought this, but let me see. Well, it's sensational and tells stories. And so I love that. And so I get ideas about what to pray about or how to pray. And then I do a lot of praying during the day for people, for Lauren, for my family, for my niece, my nephew, everyone who's got something on their mind or has a health issue. I spend a good portion of my day mindful and prayerful of other people. And it's working.
Good habits. Well, and thank you for all the prayers on behalf of all of us. Thank you for that habit. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you, ladies, so much. It's so nice to see you all again.
Well,
Thank you.
And I'm so happy at your great success.
Oh, thank you, Laura.
Really great success. And I think I've referred a couple people to you also, haven't I?
Wonderful, I'm sure, yeah. So it's really funny when I have referrals, sometimes people don't remember, or it's such a chain reaction that by the time they get to the end of the chain, I actually don't, because you may have talked to someone and they talk to someone else and they talk to someone else. And so by the time they come to me, it's a game of telephone, but I'm very honored that you do that. Appreciate that, Laura. And thank you all of you listening for joining us here on Your Daily Writing Habit, where I am helping you write and finish writing a great book. Please drop by my Inc. Authors group on Facebook to connect with other authors like yourself. I always put the link in the show notes, and I'll drop any other relevant links to everybody's companies here, Impact Group, and all the things so you can get information about the books mentioned today and everything else. So until tomorrow, happy writing.
Laura.